Morning. How are you guys? Can you see me? Hey. There's my webcam.
Good morning.
Morning. How's everybody? So many of you here so early. Good job. I'm going to turn this back off because it's off.
Why did you start a gym session and start doing some exercise? That's a great thing.
It's just scary. Okay, I'm going to shut that off. Now, I want you guys to keep your mics on, though. Tell me what you thought about Frankie. I think he really liked visiting with everybody. Did you guys get some good information from him?
I do. I think he provide he kind of saw us the real world for me, because everything start he used a framework, his CIS framework, the street framework. Everything is framework. So we need to get you to choose framework and the components as soon as possible.
Yeah, he was good. I think he felt bad because he was talking so much about web dev stuff because he used to work on C#. But that doesn't bother me because I wanted you guys to just hear, what he thought about getting a job and things like that. It's all part of CIS. So I don't get wishing that he was talking about C# doesn't matter to me. Just so you guys get good information, that's all that matters. So
yeah, because in school we focus on a lot on learning some background or base skill. It's so important so we can understand some kind of similar framework or component or class in C# or even in Java or something like that. So
yep.
That's what I think.
I think it was good. Everybody else being quiet. Getting a little bit of good
still
morning.
doing some exercise.
Yep, that's what we need. Make everybody do jumping jacks this morning. Make you get up and get moving. Let's take a look at stuff. I'm going to share my screen. We're kind of quiet this morning. Can you see Canvas? Am I showing you the right one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes you're not sure. Try to get all these screens up. Okay, I was finally grading, and I'll be looking at that exception handling RAPL. So don't worry too much about that grade unless you want to take a look at it, but I'll see what was wrong with it, and we'll touch on it again Wednesday. But for now, if you guys would, if you would go to the collaborations tab. I think some of you have already done this, and click on this thank you card for Frankie. I wanted to do a touch screen type thing and have you guys, write thank you on it, but the collaborations tab doesn't show up on the mobile app and just all sorts of technical difficulties with us. So if you could just click on that and just type in there, thank you, I'll send it to him so that he knows that you guys appreciated his time. So it's so nice of them to do that. I have some different guest speakers for different classes, and it's always interesting to see what they have to say. I don't like to give them any sort of cues or anything, just let them go with it, because you just never know. I've had sometimes that have said, no, you shouldn't go in this field. I wish that they wouldn't say that, but they were having a bad time, so they said it. This week, we're kind of focusing on finishing up our beginning forms stuff and looking at exam 3. So the hot and cold game is due on Wednesday, and I know a lot of people have been working on it. Don't forget about that discussion board, compiled versus interpreted. I haven't checked back on it, but I made an inflammatory statement at the very beginning about how interpreted languages are by default insecure. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are about that. So this week we're going to be looking at the project for your unit exam and the actual exam. Now our project this time, take a look at it. I do want you to work with your group. I do want you to submit it on your own. So we'll see how that works out. I appreciate you guys being patient about that this semester, trying to figure out how we could get stuff submitted with help for everybody. When you're looking at this project, you're going to create your own form that's a survey about something. So you might ask people, what their favorite game is, if they had a good time at an event, anything like that. I've seen some really creative ones. But the thing is, I want you to use several different Windows Forms controls. So come up with some ideas with your group. You do not need to submit design documents, but you should have some. It's going to make your life a lot easier if you come up with a mock-up of what you want your form to look like. Just a drawing. Visual Studio, if you guys have noticed, the form designer is so easy to use that it's kind of hard to make yourself use a whole nother tool to create a mock-up. You can, and it's highly recommended, but it's also possible to just use the Visual Studio Form Designer itself as your mock-up tool. Now, once you've got your form laid out and designed, you want to create a functioning project. This project is not going to have a lot of code. It's going to take the information on the screen and display it in a meaningful way. So you might have a label or a text box that displays the output. Not on the document, but totally acceptable, would also be a message box displaying that output. So changes like that are always fine when we're working with our forms apps. So anybody have any questions about that one? Do take a look at it and let me know if something pops up.
I have one question. So we have Windows Form Control, and also we have WPF in .NET. So can we use WPF instead?
Can you use what?
WPF.
Sure, that's fine. If you want to use WPF. Yep.
Yeah.
I can't help you as much with it. Usually it doesn't cause any trouble, so that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Not a problem. So the exam itself is a lot of multiple choice questions. They should all come from these practice quizzes. So there's a chapter 10 in that PDF document was about error handling or forms. So there's 2 chapters about forms design and development in that PDF document. That would be a good resource. But the practice quiz should have all of the questions from the question banks. Also, any vocab on Quizlet is a good place to study. So for those multiple choice questions. Great, I think that gets us all caught up. Unless anybody else has any questions about anything. Here we go. In Discord, I dropped a zip file from our AudioCD form that we were working on last week because we're going to expand on that. Now, if yours is up and working, I would rather you use yours. But if you ran into any sort of difficulties and you don't feel like you have a good example to start with, let's grab this file. Now, after you download it, I want you to create a folder and to hold the solution and extract the contents of this zip file into that new folder. So I did not send you the solution folder, just the project and the solution file. So we want to get used to working with files like that and figuring out where all of our stuff is. Okay, so everybody got a AudioCD form that you can start with? So you see some yeses Yes is on the screen. I've got one in the chat. People are getting it. Our class has just been doing such a great job about being here. You guys really have. Awesome. It can be kind of hard to focus with all of this going on around us. Okay, I'm going to go ahead unless somebody says, no, wait. So I have this project already open. And I want to make some design changes. So before I start, I'd like to think a little bit about what I'd like to do. I like the way our form works, and let's see if we review. We can go look at our code in lots of different ways. I'll press F7 to switch to the code editor. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see a little bit more, kind of review what we did last time. We saw last time that if we created a form load event, it would run before the form was displayed. So we created a little event to create a default album. So that information displays on our form when it shows. Then we put an OK button on our form, and we created an event procedure that executes when somebody clicks that button. And in our OK button event, we said we're going to create an actual instance of an AudioCD. Then we're going to use all of our text boxes and other controls on the form to add data into that AudioCD instance. Then we have these if statements in here to check our radio buttons to decide how to set our genre. We added that in last time. And then finally, we do a messagebox.show to show the data that we've loaded into that CD instance. So that's great, but it's just one. And we're going to have to put a lot of other buttons on here, like to clear the screen if they want to enter another. We don't really have any way for them to go back and forth. So what if we put on our form a list, like a whole list of all of the CDs that they've entered, or all of the ones that we have as test data, and then we could let them click on one of those CDs to display its information here in our detail form. If we do that, then we're going to probably need a few more buttons, like to add new entries to our list, delete entries from our list. So let's see if we can get that to work. I think that I want my list to be over here on the left-hand side of the screen. So that means I'm going to keep all of this stuff over on the right. So I'm going to resize my form a little bit. And I'm going to select all of this. Remember, I did a rubber band selection. Just start it up here, clicked and hold my mouse button, and drag it across all those controls so that they're all selected. And then I'm going to move them all over to this side of the screen. Got it? Everybody okay with that? Got your moving? Okay, good. So now I want to add that list. We're just going to kind of see how it works. The control I'm going to use is called a ListBox. And there are a couple of different controls that can display lists like that pretty easily. We have the list box and the list view. Right now, I want you to be really careful to get which one do I want. List view. I said list box, but I really want list view. So what a list box is, let me put one on my screen and you can see it. So in a list box, you can see I just have kind of a list of things. Let me delete that. Nothing fancy. And then in a list view, it looks more sort of like, well, you can't tell a thing. Not being helpful. I'm going back to list box. You're gonna have to play with those controls, and I promise we will. Okay, so in my list box, what I'm gonna do is make this big because I want it to show a list of all of the audio CDs that we have so far. Now, just like our other controls, let's rename this list box. We probably will never have multiple list boxes, but just to be clear, we'll call this list box CD. Now, as we look through our list box control, you'll see there's a lot of the same properties that we've seen in our other controls. We have a few additional controls that have things to do with how to format this whole list. And then one thing that's really important, one property that's super important, are the items in this list. So you see our items property says it's a collection. So our items are basically an array of things that are going to display in this list. So as we add audio CD control items to our list, they will become part of this collection. Right now, our scroll bar is not visible. We can change that. And our selection mode is set to 1, and I'll show you in a minute what that means. So everything looks good here. I think I'm gonna change its name. We did already to ListBox CD. And then let's add something in our code to use this thing. I'm gonna go back to our code. And right here where we do the messagebox.show, let's change that. I'm going to say, using my list box, I want to look at the collection of items in my list box, and I want to add to it. Now what I want to add is my audio CD. It says, ooh, audio CD is a type which is not valid in the given context. So we're gonna have to use our toString method here. Now it's being really weird. Oh, I am being really weird. I'm sorry, it's too early. What is our audio CD's instance? My CD. That's the one that I want to add to the list. Here I am trying to add the actual class. That makes no sense. I want the instance. So just like I want to display the instance in our message box, I want to use the instance when I add it to the list box. Now, a couple of things about this. This instance name should not run the toString. So in our message box, we said run the toString method of my CD and display that output in this message box. Here we're saying take the myCD instance, not just the toString, take the myCD instance and add it to this list box. Let's see if it works. Okay, so here's my form, my new list box. I'm going to go ahead and choose something and click OK. And now I've got that item in my list. Do you have an item in your list?
Is there a way to make it kind of flex to the box so it doesn't? You can see all of it.
Not right now. We're not focused on that right now.
Okay.
Okay. So, any other questions? Making things pretty is not our mission right now. We're trying to work with classes and forms and list boxes. You guys do so good at making it pretty. So we do need to make it a little bit better. We could do that in our toString method, or we might decide we need another method in our class to format our AudioCD output for the form, or, you know, there's just lots and lots of options to us to make it all look good. But we're mostly concerned that we have this item in our list now. So let's close out of our application. Whenever we're working with our application here, as soon as we open it up, we could type a bunch of test data in, right, each time we used it. And then that way we can make sure that our list was working and doing all these great things. But that seems like kind of a lot of work for us every time we test it. What if we created a class that just created test entries so that we would have something to work with? Let's try it. In our AudioCD form class or project, let's create a new class. And let's call this test database, because we're actually going to be pretending like we're a database here, that we can generate CDs for this application. So let's put a comment to that effect. Generate test data. In our class, I really don't want to have an instance of this test database class. I want to just be able to call it and have it spit out a bunch of test data for us. So let's say we're going to have a static method that returns an array of audio CDs. So let's call this generate data. So the first thing we're going to need is an array to hold our AudioCD array. And for our purposes, let's just say, whoops, let's just say 10 would be a good number for our array, because we don't need too much test data. We might decide we don't really even need that much test after we're typing for a little while. So we could do a lot of different things here. We could generate some things. We could just have it all hard-coded. So many different ways. Just don't even know how we want to do it. There's just so many options of what we could do. Let's do a for loop. And I want to control our for loop with an integer named I. And let's start with I equals 0. And we'll run until I is less than our entries. And I could just put the number 10 there, right? But then I'd have to change it in 2 places if I wanted to change it. And as programmers, we want to change it as few places as possible. And I'm going to update the value of I for each loop. So I should be able to just use that number as our audio ID. So for each of these, as we go through, let's create an instance. So I'm going to say that my entries array at position I, which is going to start out at 0, right, is a new audio CD. I can make the audio CD at entries sub I. We can have our audio ID equal our value of I. Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and include I. So now our entries are not going to be very pretty as far as giving us good album information. What else do we want to know here? Let's see, we want our cost. I'd like them to be different. It's the only reason I want to multiply that by something. And our genre. Maybe number of tracks too. We'll use I for everything, huh? Single quote for a char. Okay, this should give us a bunch of entries in this array that we created. So whenever we're working with a class and we put our class entry into the array, then that array location becomes our instance. So now I should have several entries. I'm going to go ahead and issue a return on our entries array, and our test data generator should be done. Let's see if we can use it. In our form, we were using our form load to create this temporary test data. Let's comment that out. Do you see comments? There it is. You can also use keystrokes. Great. And instead, I think that I'm going to call our test data. So we're going to create an array of audio CDs. Make it a size of 10 again. And now we should be able to load this by calling our new test class. So it says, oh yeah, I can do that. Now that we have test data, we can say, let's set up a new for loop. And for the size of our array, let's loop through our array, updating the value of I. Now as we loop for each entry in our test data array, let's add that to our list. So here I am, we want to do this items.add. Now this time, our instance name is called test data because that's the name of our array. And we're using the test data at position I to add into our form. Let's run it. Now, anytime you get errors, we want to say no, because it just means that it did not update the version of your program that's going to run. So if you say yes, you're not running your changes anyways. So let's see what kind of errors we got. Cannot implicitly convert int to string. Where am I? Oh, our audio ID. So we need to do I dot 2-string. Take care of our error. Try that again. Oh, there we go. Now we have all of our ugly output here, and we do have our 10 different entries to work with as far as test data goes. So let's set this up in the debugger and run it and see how everything fit together. I'm going to start in my form 1, and I want to start debugging or set a breakpoint right here at the beginning of my form load where I allocate our AudioCD. Run that. And sure enough, we stop execution and we're sitting here ready to do our debugging before we ever see that form. This line of code is going to allocate out our test data array. Right now it's sitting here, but it's null. I'm going to step into this code and my array has been allocated now. It's got 10 entries. If I look at them, they're all empty. But now we're getting ready to call our static method to generate our test data. And here we are. We're in our test database class, in our generate data method, and we're going to get started in that method. First, we declare another array. I could have passed that one in there, right? There's so many different ways we could do it. They're all fine. Now I'm going to go into my for loop, set I to 0, make sure it's less than the length of the number of entries, and then add an entry. When I add an entry, control branches to my AudioCD class, and the default no-arg constructor runs to create that blank entry. Then I update that entry. I'm going to say yes, I do, because I want to fix that. So this behavior can be overridden. We changed this on our classroom computers, but I obviously haven't changed it here at home. So I want to choose step into specific or uncheck step over properties and operators in my settings. And I want to continue being notified. Let's see if I can change that. Where are my settings? It's going to let me see them. The account settings. That's not it. That's why we want options, not settings. In your options, in debugging, under general, this checkbox, step over properties and operators, I'm going to uncheck it because I want to see those properties being executed. So I'm going to click OK after unchecking that. Now, as I continue on, I should see the property be used within my class every time I'm using the property. So my album is being set to the value that was passed. Cost. I could look at this value down here and see number of tracks. Finally, my genre. So this is going to execute our 10 times over and over. And I'm not good at that, making things jump to the next place. So I'll just stop. I'll set my breakpoint then after we return from the test data class. And now I can see going through that loop again to take that data that was inserted into the array and add it to the list box. Now you'll see each time we add an item to the list box, we're executing our AudioCD toString method. We're getting our code. And then we're ready to do the next one. So now if you just watch me click through it, it doesn't really mean a lot, but if you start doing it on your own and really getting the feel, it does. So this is the area where we've got to keep our brains working. All right, so we generated some test data. Now we don't have to type a bunch of stuff every time we start this thing up, so that's great. So now what do we want to do? Let's look back at our form. Everything's looking pretty good. We have our list box that's going to display all our data. We have our audio stuff that's going to display over here for one individual thing. Let's do that. Let's say, how do we add the code so that if they click on one of these lines over here in the list box, it displays that item in our detail area. Let's put that in. Now, whenever we're working with the list box, our default event is the clicked event. We know that we can double click on our list box right here to add that event to our code, but we can also use the events window. So I'm going to click on, make sure you're on your list box. Got it right here. Click events. And then my default selected item for a list box is index changed. Why would that be? Well, whenever I click on an item, the current item is going to be dependent on where it is in this list, in this collection. So that's its index value. And if I click on a different one, then that index has changed. So that's why selected index changed is the default method name. Now to create that event procedure in my code, I can just double click over here in this text area, and that will create that event procedure the same as if I had double clicked on the control. So in looking at this event name, we see the index is really important. It's something that we're going to need to keep track of between showings of our form. So it's something that we're going to want to make a class level variable in our form app. So let's create that variable that we can use then in this method. I want to go up to the very top of our class. And right here under the public partial class form 1, we're going to add our instance variables. Now for this, we want to keep track of the current index. So that's going to be an integer. Let's name it current index. And I'm going to start with it at -1. That's because 0 is a valid index. So if I started at 0, it seems like, oh, yep, we're working on that very first one. But I want to use something that shows it's not valid. Nobody's clicked on anything yet. So let's set our default value to -1. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll all the way back down to my new method. The ListBox CD selected index changed. This means they clicked on something. So if I look at my ListBox control, my selected index is going to be the value of that current list item. So that's the field we want to use to set our current index. But I name it 2 R's. So we're saying grab index of the selected one. So whichever one they clicked on, that's the one we're going to be grabbing and keeping a hold of. Now, we're going to need to take all of the things that are in our AudioCD and move them to all of our variables on the form. In this code up here, we do the opposite. We've got our AudioCD and we're loading those values with all of the variables from our form. So this is going to be a little bit backwards, but I can see that that's something that I'm going to be wanting to do maybe more often than not. So let's create a method. And we'll say call it load CD to form. Now, whenever I look at this, it makes me think, it seems like I'm going to need some sort of AudioCD instance to work with all of this. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Along with my current index as a global or class level field, I think I need an instance of an AudioCD with this CD. And we'll say it's an empty instance of an AudioCD. We're just looking for our declaration there. Okay, now back to the bottom. Now, in our load, we're going to say whatever AudioCD is in this CD, we're going to use it to load our text boxes and our other form controls. So this CD, album ID. Our album. We need to set its text property so we can see it on the form. It's going to be from this CD. Album. And let's see what else we have. We have our cost. And we're going to need to convert that to a string to display in that text box. We have our numeric up down. That's our number of tracks. And if you remember, it was the value property that we set on that. So num tracks should go straight to value. We shouldn't get any errors. Now, what other things do we need? Looking at my form, got our album ID and our album and our number of tracks and our cost. We need our genre. So I couldn't decide where I was. Okay. And so for our genre, it's going to be a little bit interesting. Let me look at that. What do you guys think for our genre? Like, we're going to have to look at the code and then check the box. So like if our code is a C, we're going to have to make classical be checked, right? Because we don't have any other way to display that. So we're going to have to kind of do the opposite of what we did when we were inputting this information to be able to output it. So we're going to have to do some if statements. So if this CD's genre, let's see what we have up here. We want C. We're going to take our radio classical button and change its checked property to true. What's our next one? H. Not the one I wanted. So notice you don't have to do a lot of typing. You can let IntelliSense grab things for you. So this time, so besides J, what else do we have? C, H, J, R. Now, we can see in this example where, since we put a U in for unknown in our input, we could end up with that, and we don't really have any way to display that. So we would just have to leave our radio buttons unchecked. Right? So we're going to have to maybe put some code in to do that kind of thing by default. So here we go. This looks good. We're saying that I have a CD and I want to load it to my form. Now, how can I actually create that CD instance, that this CD? Well, up here where we are checking what item was selected, we can do that very easily. We're going to say this CD equals our ListBox items index. At this point, the list box, we got a lot of emergency happening around here. Sorry, can you hear it? Sorry, not laughing, but our roundabout, we live right on a roundabout and the fire trucks have a really hard time getting around it. And we're right by a fire station, so we have a lot of fire trucks. So we just get to hear a lot. So anyways, when we first put this audio CD into the list box, it was an audio CD. We knew it was, everybody knew it was. Now that it's coming back out of the list box, Visual Studio said, I don't know what this thing is. It's just an object. I don't know what you're talking about. So we have to cast it back as an audio CD. And this is safe for us to do because we know that that's how it started. So it's okay to say that's how it should end up. If we didn't know, we might have to do a little bit more work. And I think that's enough. Let's try it for right now. I'm going to run it. And I'm going to click on one. Well, it didn't do anything. I didn't call our method. Let's call our method. Load CD to form. Now, I don't have to pass any parameters or anything because this method's going to update our this CD instance and this method's going to use it. So now that we call this method, we should see some action there. Ah, yay. So now we see all sorts of great stuff. And as long as I click on other albums, it displays that information properly. Okay, is everybody working okay? Let's see one. I'm gonna unshare mine. Can I see anybody's beautiful form? Let's see, let's see. There's one. That looks good. Okay, Erin, let's see it. Ooh, much prettier way. Show us that again. How come yours looks so much better? Oh, unhandled exception. We'll have to take a look at it. Oh, look, I really like the way you lined up those text boxes and stuff. That looks really nice.
Yeah.
You can tell that I need form designer help. Do what?
It helps with my OCD.
I like it a lot. I just ignore my OCD because I'm like, we don't have time, we don't have time. Looks beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, first.
So it crashes that first one, huh? Anybody else?
I think I would just missing a semicolon on mine.
Oh, okay. Cool. Anybody else's look good? Better than mine. I like that. It's okay. See what's going on here. Nothing important. I'm not gonna miss anything important yet. All right, let's go back to it then. My poor ugly form. So there are a couple of things we could do to clean this up real fast. Was it Chase that said that? It looks awful. So let's go to our AudioCD class, right? Because it's right here we could fix it. So the big problem is we have too much verbiage, right? We almost shouldn't even have these words anymore. We could leave the colons as indicators that we're between fields and then maybe put a space after. Let's try that.
I don't think you're sharing yet.
Oh, am I not? Thank you. I should be able to tell because it totally changes my Zoom setup when I'm sharing, but I need to change that. Okay, so album. What I'm gonna do is just delete everything. I'm gonna leave the colons, might be kind of gross, we'll decide, but I'm definitely gonna put a space after each field before the new line. We notice our new lines don't really work in our list box either. That's okay. We kind of are happy about that, or else we would have each CD taking up multiple lines. If we want it to acknowledge our new lines, we have to use a /R/N. And as a really old typist, I can tell you that's carriage return new line, because you actually had to do two things to get an old typewriter back to the position to start on a new line. Do a carriage return to roll up a line. So we would have to do /R/N. Let's not do that right now though, because it would make it look really bad. Let's try running it with those small changes. And because we have our output for our class set up in our toString, it is really pretty easy for us to make those changes, right? We just have that one spot, we can update things, and we can completely change the way things look. So that's why throughout all the semester so far, I've been trying to get everybody to focus on methods and moving pieces of code to their own spot, because it can make our life so much easier in the long run. I still get an unhandled exception when I click on 0. Let's see what's going on with that. Oh, the value of 0 is not valid for value. So it's in our load. So let's change that. I'm gonna stop running. I feel like that's a problem in our database. So I'm gonna go to our test database. And I'm going to, instead of just taking the value of I for our number of tracks, let's do I plus 1. And that's just a fast, quick way for us to solve that problem. So we won't ever be passing a value of 0 to our numeric up down. Does that make sense? You see why that was crashing? We have a lot of pieces. Definitely. Okay, so we're doing really good. We've got everything looking great. Whenever we start up our program, all of our detail fields are empty and our list box is showing data. And we're being able to click on things and have it show up in our detail fields just like we want. So just really, really nice. It's working well. So let's look at our code and mess it up. Better add some comments first. Now, in our selected index changed method, we're going to update the instance selected index and the detail display. Oops, I want those to be in the right place. Now for our load CD to form, we're going to say use a audio CD instance to load the form controls. So I have one thing that I don't think is going to be a problem for us right now, but it could be. Let's look. When I run this, if I choose this album, it says it's rock. They're all going to say they're rock, right? Which is a flaw in our test data, because this means we're not testing all of that genre stuff because we have so many different things going on with that. So that's kind of a bad thing in our test data. So let's fix that. Instead of just always using an R, we're going to have to get a little bit more dynamic. Let's say if I
Modulus 4.
4, would that be good? So it's trying to think. That sounds good. And so what do we want there? If it's 0, get rid of that extra parenthesis. So if I mod 4 equals 0, we want to do classical. Math people, can I do else if 9, 4 equals 1? Is that valid? Are we going to get anything? Then my math skills do not go this way. Single quotes up here. Now you guys can see why you're worth so much money, because even to generate test data, you've got to have some skills. I can just say else. Let's see if that'll give us a variety here. How much better. Now we at least have some different types of genres. So back to where we were. If we click on one, we see the right radio button control getting selected. So our code for that is working. And we could have said, well, we know it's working, we're just that good. But it's much better for us to test it. And now if we have anything else that pops up because of our genre, we have valid test data that we can use. So that looks really, really good. What I'm thinking though is, what if I had an item in my list that was unknown? They didn't pick a genre. Would it still display the leftover from the last one? Depending on how we have things set up, it could. What's best for us to do is create a method that clears out everything on our form. Let's call it our reset method. So I'm going to put it in our form. And I'm going to go down to the very bottom of our code. And I'm going to add it. Form reset. And now there is like a reset command. Ours is a little different because we're going to do it exactly the way we want. So we're going to say that the audio ID that equal to a null value. Now, there are some other things we can do. If you look at your text box album control, let's see if there's any sort of methods that we could use for a text box besides setting it equal to a space. Oh, look, there's a clear. Let's try it. Clear was a method, so I had to use parentheses after it. I'll just do a clear. Now, our num albums is numeric up down. Num track, sorry. And we saw that that value cannot go below 1. We'll set it to 1 because that's kind of like our default. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our genre. So to clear out our genre, we need to set all of those radio button controls to checked equals false. So I like to set some methods up to reset all of my checkboxes and things like that so that I can just call those methods really easily. So we might want it separate from our form reset, but for this works great. So we're just basically saying that if somebody decides they want to add a new AudioCD. We can just reset our form because we have everything here already set up for it. Let's save all and look at our form. So the things that we're going to add a button to allow our users to add a new audio CD, because right now they really would have to do a lot of work to try to do that. We're going to allow them to click on a CD and then update it. And it would be really nice if they could click on a CD and delete it and get rid of it out of the list too. So those are the things that we're going to be working on. Oh, fancy, fancy. So let's look at our form. Whenever we first start and we want to add a new, or I'm sorry, we are looking at this list. Because we're going to add a button to add a new item over here in our detail area, I feel like we should protect all this. We should lock it so that nobody can change it. Another thing, I'd like to show you how our application, since I put this list box over here on the left, kind of changes things. Let me show you. I'm going to click start and I want to press the tab key. If I press tab, that's pretty good. Through stuff. Oh, I go to the OK button and then back to our genre. So that's kind of clunky. And then I finally jump over to our list box. Is that completely out of control? You know, sometimes when you're using websites, it feels like it. It feels like they had absolutely no control. Let's take a look. It's actually totally under our control, and it's a really easy thing. So I'm going to start out with my list box. We've seen already that the visible method lets us determine whether something is showing up on our form or not. We have some others. Oops, I'm looking at my events. I need to go back to my properties. We have some others besides the visible property. We have, there's like a read only on some of our text boxes. There's several different things. Another one is the tab index and tab stop. They don't actually affect whether something is visible, but they affect whether the cursor will jump to that position or not. Anything that I want the tab key to stop at is going to say tab stop true. So if I wanted the tab key to just fly on by, I would set it to false. That would drive people crazy, but I can do that. I only do that for things like status messages and things like that that I don't really want the user to worry about. So let's create one. What if we had a message down here at the bottom that kind of indicates the status of things? I'm going to use a text box. I'm going to put it down here at the very bottom. I'll make it go all the way across the screen like that. And I'm going to call this text box message. Now, in our message, I don't want the tab key to stop there. I don't want the user to ever type anything there. So I'm going to change tab stop from true to false. Now, a couple of other things. Because the user's never going to type anything in this text box, I can change the read-only property and make that true. And you'll see it kind of disappear just a little bit for us in the background because it is going to be a read-only text box. Now, I'd kind of like it to blend in a little bit more. So I think I'm going to change my back color to be the color of my form. And I'm going to change my fore color to be the color of my text, or we could make this be something that was more noticeable, like bright red, since it's going to be a status message. We'll try that. Okay, let's use our status message. I'm going to go back to our code. And there's a few places I want to access this. First of all, in our form load, let's update that. And we'll just say data loaded. So that's at the end of our form load, because that's where we know that our data has been loaded. Next, I'm skipping by my OK button for now, as we're updating things. And I'm going to look at the selected index changed. Let's make our message say something like CD displayed. Let's run it and see how that impacts things. First of all, we see our data loaded message down here. If we tab, we should see that we don't go tabbing down into that text box. That would just be ugly. So it looks good. Now, what about all the other form fields? Go back to design. And I want to check each of them and look at their tab index. And the tab index is the order the tab key works. So I would like the tab key to start in this list box because I have it on my left. So I can make that tab index 0. And then I want it to go to audio ID. So I'll make it tab index 1. I want compilation name. So I'll make it 2. Notice it was working pretty good before because we'd put the controls on the form in order. But when we started jumping around like with our genre and stuff, then it got out of kilter. Number of tracks, set to 3. And it is so big because of our labels. Cost to be 4. Then my genre will be 5. And my OK button will be 6. Let's run it. And press tab. Now you should see things going in the right order. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've had to use the tab key, you know how frustrating it can be if it's not working properly. So it is worth taking that extra second or two to make sure that it's properly set up. One last thing before we finish today is whenever we're running and just looking at this list, I'd like all of these fields to be protected. So I'm going to go to our code and I'm going to actually create a method that protects all of those. For this, I'm going to call, whoops, that's not a form. I'm going to call this enable disable. And I'm going to ask to have a string passed to me that contains the value of whether they want it true or false. So value string contains true or false. So that way I can say, hey, text box, audio ID, your enabled property is whatever that value is that was passed to me. But I have to make it a boolean. How's that? Much better. Now our album enabled property. Same way. What else? Our cost. With our radio button, we have to do each one. And notice by having a Boolean value passed to us, we only have to have this method created once because we can use it for enabling and disabling. Now, when we are displaying our item, because somebody clicked on it, we want to make sure that the user can't type anything in there. And whenever our form loads, we want to. So let's call this from our form load. Scroll, scroll, scroll. There's my form load. So in our form load, right before we update our status message, let's call our enable disable method. And we're going to pass in, because we want everything shut off. See if that works. So now all of this stuff should be disabled. What's your tab key do? Oh, my OK button is still there. Do I want it to be disabled? I might have to add that. Let's add it. It's a little different. But whenever we're disabling all of those detail items, I think our button needs to be disabled also. We might decide that has to happen in a different place, so I'll put a space there before it. All right, lots of code this time. We've done a lot of things. I'm going to stop there. And next time we'll add our buttons or a menu to make all of the other things happen that we would like to have happen. You're working on your hot cold game. You have your new assignment for the survey form to work on and the unit exam. Let me know if you're having trouble keeping up with everything. I think that you should be in pretty good shape, but I don't know what you're having to deal with, so I could be wrong. Is everybody doing okay with stuff? I graded the first TFS treasure hunt, and there was a couple of people I made some comments to about not being able to find that in TFS. So if you're one of those, let's get that taken care of so we know for sure that you're being able to access it and everything's working. I'll be grading the Hello World, so make sure that's in TFS. Everything going. Any questions? Or comments for the greater good? Everybody's good. I will zip this one and post it to Discord also because we have done so much, and make sure that everybody's keeping up with it. Let me know if you have any questions or if any of the pieces don't fit. When we get to form-based processing, it does make a lot of sense because you can see things on the screen, but then we do start getting a lot of pieces, and a lot of pieces that are fitting together, and it can get a little bit puzzly. So if you like that, that's a good thing, but if it's getting on your nerves, let me know and we'll figure out a way to get all those pieces pulled together. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this thing. Thank you guys. Bye.